to follow. Leeds United.
West Yorkshire Sport. Live.
BBC Radio Leeds.
Dave Tomlinson, author, massive Leeds United fan, and of course have your own website as well, which is an intriguing read as well. It's so in depth, and it really is. Dave, it's got lots of what I like about it is a lot of the quotes that you've got. You took out, to contemporary sort of, evidence and witnesses to the times. And and I'd say that's what this book, your latest book, because you've got a series of them, haven't you? But this one, Dirty Leeds, the first title. Is it too simple just to say it's a look at the relationship between Harry Reynolds, probably is a dream sort of chairman or owner, if you like, and a manager? Is it too simple to look at it in those terms?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's for others to decide, really. But I thought it was useful because it's never really been done from Harry Reynolds' view. It's always about Don Revie, and Harry gets a look in and they talk about what he's like. And a lot of people today wouldn't know who he is or anything about him. I think it's around. It was a happy opportunity, the two of them working together at the club. So I don't think if either the club or Revie or Reynolds hadn't been there, it would have been the same. It was just a real odd mix. So I think Harry came in just before Don did, and he was keen to do things anyway. And I think it's really interesting, some of the things that happened there in that relationship. And I try to bring out what it's like with the other members of the board. So there's a bit of, Imagineering in there. So some of the stuff's made up in terms of the conversations, but you can see how it would have been. So it's using insights around that. So it's very much focusing just not those two, but other people around them. So there's a bit in terms of Don and his wife and others as well. So I try and give that flavour in terms of the people, because I think Leeds is all about people, and certainly that time it was about the people.
Nowadays, it's very common for us to see owners, even chief execs, if you like, isn't it, for many clubs? And, there's a certain amount of ego involved, which I suppose has been conflated with the commercialisation of the game as well. But, owners wanting to be seen and heard a lot more. Where would you put Harry Reynolds, all those years ago, if you were to compare him to a modern day chairman, if you like, or owner?
Okay, I don't think there's anyone quite like that breed anymore. I mean, Leeds have had a lot over the years, but not for the last 20. So when Caspian came in, that all went out the window, and the people that would invest with the local worthies, and they're no longer around. There's a few of them like Sam Longston at Derby, etc. So there's a few guys like that. So actually, if you look at it, probably the closest equivalent is someone like Ratchford now. So what he does, he's pouring money in. He's really keen on doing things. He's got a long-term vision. He talks to people in a way that the recent owners haven't. And Harry Reynolds was do that. It was all about his local club. Supported him since he was really, really young. Always lived around there. Same with Sam Bolton. It's really about they live and breathe the club in a way that nowadays I don't think it's unusual. So Leeds at the minute it's unusual in that they've got people that support the club, playing for them, and captaining them and things like that. So you've got a real strange club, strange, unique club. And I think it was the same at the time. Now, I think Harry got that. You understand locality. You understand what a treasure you really had in Revie. It was luck. It was as luck as much as anything that came through. But I'm not sure you can compare him really to anything these days. These days, it's all about business and people come in and try and get business model. In those days, we're going to do something here and it's going to be really good. Completely different mindset. She's talking about 50, 60, if not longer years ago.
Well, when we look back with hindsight, we can see why it was such a good decision for him to go and back Don Revie.
Yeah.
But if you could transport yourself back into that era, into the late 50s, early 60s, Dave, then reading through all the evidence and as I was talking about earlier, the contemporaneous quotes and what have you, and the sort of feel for the time, what would it have been that made him think, I can trust this guy literally with my own money to take this club forward?
I think there's probably spent the last 2 or 3 years in building up to it. So they've done a lot of stuff. There's stories about Revie going with Harry Reynolds and Jack Telly was the manager at the time to see players. And I suppose there's a meeting of minds. So they spent quite a lot of time deep in conversation. It's two people who come into an environment together, and obviously they just matched. It felt right for both of them. So I'm not sure why he took the gamble. I don't think it was as simple as, right, I'm going to back this guy. It was about, we've got nowhere else to go to. What about this guy? What can go wrong with this? I mean, they were turned down by a lot over the years previously. So ever since Rach Carter, they'd had a real problem attracting people. Tried several times. So in a sense, they didn't have a lot of choice. Parry pushed that through. So he wasn't chairman at the time, but he was clearly going to be influential. He was coming through and he inspired people. He took them through things. So he persuaded people to go with Revie. I think some of this is about whether the board went along actively or not. I think they went along with it rather than actively, but then they took the credit later on. So you've got this strange thing. It was a real strange environment then. And he was inspirational, I think.
Was he? What sort of character? Well, if he was inspirational, was he quite gregarious or not? You know,
as far as I know, because I've never met him. I mean, he's long gone. So I think it's around everything you read and everything you see and everything others say about him. He really got this. So he's pictured. He spent a lot of time with the youth teams and talked to them and talked about it in the background. So he spoke straight. So he was a typical Yorkshireman, spade and all that type of stuff. Really got this, spoke in people's language, talked about it, outgoing, but he was a guy you could speak to, same as Revie was. They were salt the earth type, so they'd be talking in the board and some of the things in the boardroom, they're like that. It's a different world, but I think he was very open, very clear about what he was going to try and do with this club, and he was probably what inspired Don about the little people, making that work. If you look after the little people and the pennies, the pounds and the bigger people look after themselves. So he's doing all that. So it's really around, for me, it's none of the airs and grace. And I think that's important. So in my world, where I am now, I try and remain, it's difficult to say, man of the people, because you've got to be able to relate the entire people in an organisation. They were businesses then. So it's really taking an environment, a community around you, and inspiring them, giving them a vision. And you've got to be able to talk their language. And I think he did.
What was their relationship like then? Obviously, it's a successful one, and you say it was a meeting of minds, but was there any sort of volatility? Did they clash, do you know, or was it quite smooth in terms of, you know, that sort of plan that he had to sort of take Leeds forward?
I think it was really clear what the two of them did. Reynolds largely left it with Revie to do all the key things. As I understand it, there's a quote in the book about there's only really one time they ever fell out. And I can't actually remember whether it was when they were looking for Alan Ball or something else. So Revie was pushing and Reynolds wasn't sure. And they went through that. And it took a bit to persuade the board and they didn't get their way. As far as I understand it, that was the only time when there was, and you can't say that, there weren't any words, but those were the only serious ones. Now, whether that's the reality or not, there's only them that would really know. But certainly it seemed marriage made in heaven at a club, ideal for them.
Why did you go with the title Dirty Leeds? It's one that is very unfair, isn't it? But why you're sort of propagating the sort of perception of Leeds that's gone on for decades with that, haven't you, Dave?
Well, I'm not sure about propagating it, but it's how they're known. It's where it came from. So on the website, they've gone, grateful you're referred to that, but there's in there about where it come from. And in the 60s, that's how they were known. And that's how they're still known. So people know who they are. But this is very much about the lead into the first title. So it's intended to be first of a series. So clearly the next stage would be Super Leeds, second title, Wilco's Leeds, third title. And right now I'm working on another one, Bielsa's Leeds, Redemption. So it's this bit about, it's quarter to certain time. That's how they were known. And I tried to say in here what that was about and what the reality was. But whatever, I think Leeds fans see that as almost as badge of honour. So actually, is what they're really saying. The siege mentality. Look at them buggers, Crumpet Sandwich Brigade. It's very much a northern thing. So I think they like it. And they talk about when they're in League One, etc. We're not famous anymore. Took that on themselves. You preempt it. So whether it's propagating or not, Adam, it's the reality. And he worked with realities, I think.
Yeah, and I think also you see it now, and I think it's a very good title that you're working on redemption for the Bielsa, if you like, and because they certainly can't be called Dirty Leeds in terms of how they play. Not that they should have ever been, in my opinion, anyway. They were a brilliant side, but. Yeah, I just think like in these times, Leeds fans don't want to be everybody's second favourite team because they play nice football. That's the last thing that Leeds fans want, isn't it, Dave?
It is, but you go through that, and I'm not going to talk too much about the new one, but you go through in 2000, they were everybody's favourite other team, and that's actually a certain thing now. So when they lost at Liverpool first game of the season, actually they could be doing that again. So it's almost 20 years ago, the same thing. And I think it is about to go from Dirty Leeds into everybody's favourite other team. That's for other people. For Leeds, they don't care. This is us. It's our team. I want to be hated, they talk about.
Yeah, I think so. And just finally, Dave, then. So when Reynolds and Revie sort of got it going, and I know look, there's key signings like Bobby Collins as one. We're not the only one, but I always remember Eddie Grayson. He taught us how to win. He was the most influential signing possibly at the club, But in that, how did they play, and how were they before the tag came unfairly so with Dirty Leeds? How were they? I mean, were they a tough side, or was there some quality there as well? And did Reynolds sort of did he want a style of play, or was that just down to Revie totally, or was there sort of a collective vision as to how this team should be or how they should look?
I don't personally think there was a design. I think what it was, Don Revie wanted a leader of men, same as Harry Reynolds, and he was just the character they bought, was a real leader of men, a real short guy, took him into the trenches, was all about winning, was all about fire, was all really about the heart. And I think it just happened. So they got a load of young guys coming through at the same time, really fortunate. I'm not sure it would have worked with older seasoned players, and they sorted those out. But it's notable, someone like Jack Charlton really got it eventually, but he was a real rebel. And I think it's really about, they went for the player, they built the style, because that was where it was, and it was successful. So when they got into this, 62, 63, you had to graft. The Championship as it is now, Division 2 at that stage, you have to fight your way out. And it's a certain style, and it was really, really effective. So hard running, really energetic, in your face, and it worked. I think it was the stage where they pioneered, or people would say they pioneered or brought in gamesmanship and that type of stuff. And I think it's around, they only really flourished when they dropped that themselves, but it was so effective. Why would you do it different? So a team coming up now, they have to play to their style. If they try and play like Liverpool or whatever, they're going to get stuffed. The same as Bielsa now. You stick to your truth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, that is, Dave. Dave, sorry, just again, on Reynolds, I mean, it's virtually impossible now, certainly in the Premier League or top-end Championship, for a local businessman. It's really hard to have the pockets to do what's happened to Leeds now. You've now got countries literally buying, football clubs, haven't you, to reach the upper echelons of the Premier League. So just how much did he invest? I mean, both personally and I suppose in terms of his own personal fortune in making Leeds successful, Harry Reynolds. I mean, does this get overlooked somewhat?
I think it does. There was lots of stuff. There was a lot of the directors at the time, they were pouring in thousands and thousands, and that's, I suppose, equivalent to millions these days. And they were doing loans and underwriting things and etc. And as far as I understand it, they didn't really take cash out. So it was loans going in, supporting going through. So they talk about tens of thousands, but who knows what that is in today's money. But it was their reputation. It was important to them, and it was much about that. So for them, they got money to invest. They got money to lose. And it was important for some of the directors at the time that they weren't losing money and they weren't taking unnecessary risks, and there was that tension there. But certainly, they put big money in at the time into a club that was nowhere, just to keep it alive, And you look through the accounts at the time, it's all about you flog a player 1 year, you're actually okay, much like it is today. But they stopped doing that selling, so they had to fund them going through. And it was actually about 65 when they came close to the double and got into Europe. That changed it all. So they go from rags to riches at that stage. But unfortunately, that was all squandered away after Revie left, because they came so full of what it was like, so full about it. It's actually us. It's us that's done this. And it was a real tragedy when they collapsed in the way they did, but that's a different story.
Dave, look, thanks very much. And just to remind everybody where they can get Dirty Leeds, the first title, where's the best place for them to go? Okay,
standard place on Amazon. There's also a guy called Philip Howard's Books in Roundhay you can go to. He's got some signed copies. If you go to mightyleeds.co.uk, you've got all the details in there. You can contact me direct. Happy to talk to anyone about it, doing descriptions, whatever. Standard place, though, is Amazon. That's the easiest.
Proud to follow Leeds United.
West Yorkshire Sport, live.
BBC Radio Leeds.